Tara Lynn with 5 Acres Honey Farm. I am doing some soil tests in my garden and around our property, mainly for a permaculture design class that I'm taking. And one of the things that I've learned, of the many things I've learned about soil samples in the last week, is that you can smell the different variations in soil. And what I noticed is that one of the students in the class, according to the notes on the discussion board, that she tasted all of her different soils. And that didn't sound very appetizing to me. I think that there's enough other observation methods to figure out the different characteristics of the soil. And also I'm going to show you something that I've noticed as I'm taking a closer look at the sample. And that little guy and that little guy, like they're all moving around. I mean, it's good. Okay, I picked these soil test kits, or I guess it's a single kit, but it has multiple tests. And it lets you test for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and the soil pH. And I got this a year ago, maybe a little over a year ago, and I've just totally postponed actually doing it. However, I'm taking a permaculture design class right now, so yesterday I had to prep these 3 soil samples and then analyze them based on the clay, silt, and sand separation. So the reason that in the past, and I just have to drop something on the floor, in the past when I tried to do these little tests, I didn't realize that you have to let everything separate for a day, and so I had time set aside to do the tests, and then I found out it was going to be a whole day later, and so the time never worked out. So at this point, I've got all my samples, so before I empty these jars and sanitize them, I'm going to go ahead and actually test. And so I took this sample from my in-ground garden, this sample from our front yard near the pond where I have some raised beds, and this was from the ground next to the raised bed. And then this is from down by the creek in an area I'm hoping to establish some biomass and swales and hopefully plant some water-loving trees. And I'm going to be testing each of them. All right, I'm gonna grab, this is from my garden, and I'm supposed to, I thought I just took it out. Yes, I did. Okay, so I'm supposed to take out the color that corresponds to the container, and it is saying to make sure it is, yes, the little color chart is in place, and I'm supposed to fill up the chamber and put all of this stuff in. So I'm gonna fill it up to the fill line as it's described, trying my best to take the parts that don't have as many particles in them. And there it is, it's up to the fill line. And then I have to open this up and carefully separate this little pill or capsule, and then I need to empty it in here. Let's see if this works. This is a lot more difficult to open than I was anticipating. Okay, wait, I think I got it. Okay. Woo, don't want to knock it over. Okay. All right, so I put this in, and I believe trying to read this and do this at the same time. All right, so this is gonna go in the trash. Put this over here for now. So it looks like I do, now I have to shake it, and then I have to wait 10 minutes for the color to develop. So I'm gonna set my timer and then come back, and then we'll compare it to this chart. All right, so this was a little bit different. This is a pH test, and I'm just letting the other ones, my timer's about to go off to start the first one. But with this one, I just have to let it sit for a minute, and it looks like, based on the color, that it's a neutral pH. So that's good. It's not acidic, it's not alkaline, and you just let it hang out for a minute And all I had to do, this one was the only one that was different, where you put the soil, oops, you put the soil to this first line here, and then you put the little capsule in, and then you fill up to the top with regular water. And you let that sit for a minute. All of the other tests, you have to let sit for 10 minutes, and I got those set up here. And I'm just checking, yep, my timer just went off. So, all right, so this first one is for nitrogen, and based on this, like, it's not even pink or purple at all. It's completely like yellow. It doesn't even look like anything happened to it. So I'm thinking that this means it's nitrogen depleted because it's not showing anything. So I need to add nitrogen to this part of the garden, which makes sense because this is the part of the garden I took a sample from that I haven't been happy with the growth in that area. So I'm gonna put down depleted, taking little notes here, and pH was neutral. All right, the time is up for that one now. And this, I'm just holding it up to the light to take a closer look. This one to me looks like it's deficient. It's like it's not totally depleted, but I'm not seeing a real blue tinge to it. So I'm just thinking it's phosphorus deficient. So we've got low levels of both of those now. And I've got a few more minutes left before I thought this was potassium for K, but it's actually potash. And I have to research to see how they may be related, or, you know, why that's labeled that way. So I'm not as familiar with this yet. One thing I wanted to show you, while I'm waiting for the rest of the sample to finish, I guess, coming to solution there, I kind of wanted to show you, this was the sample that I took from my in-ground garden. And part of what I am doing for my permaculture design class is, and this is kind of difficult with just one hand, but you can kind of see this first thin layer at the top, and I'll flip the camera around in a second. And the thin layer is the clay, and then there's a layer of, yes, it's the clay. A little thin layer at the top is the clay. Then like this thicker band that's down here, that is the silt. And then everything along the bottom is sand. So that's how everything settles in here. It was the first time doing a soil test for me in this way and analyzing it like this. And then we also did a ribbon test. And by we, I'm taking a virtual class. So everyone across the country, and I think there's some international students in there too, you know, we take a sample from the ground and then kind of clump it and then try to form it into ribbons, and then measure how many ribbons formed and the length of them. And then there's a ribbon chart, and then you can figure out what kind of soil it is. Here's an example of how we clumped it together before pressing it into these different ribbons. So by doing these like different methods, it kind of helps determine what kind of soil it is. And it was interesting to see because between the 3 different samples that I did, some of them were spot on with the same kind with the different types of tests, and others, they're kind of on the border, and I'm a little uncertain how accurate they are. But I think, let me see, yes, the next sample is about to be ready. All right, the time is finally up on this one. I'm just gonna hold it up to the light. And this one looks like it's the potash. Maybe this is potentially potassium. It is in the sufficient to surplus range, so that's at least something that is on the higher side. So neutral pH, sufficient or surplus of potash, and then both nitrogen and phosphorus were both either deficient or depleted. So now I can look at cover crops and different amendments that I can add to that area of the garden to help boost these numbers. I'm also really curious now to do a soil test on the other side of the garden where I'm having really great, or at least last year I had great production. So I'm curious if they are dramatically different, and you know, and what I can do to get them more imbalanced. I am gonna do the samples on the rest. These are the other ones that I have back here on the other 2 sites around the yard and see what the results are. All right, here's a closer look where I was trying to explain this little band is clay, and then there's silt and sand. And same thing here, all the way through. And what I found interesting about the class is that, like, I thought if you have clay soil, then it would mean that like all of this would be clay. But there's actually like a chart, and you would find the percentage of each, and then it's this like pyramid chart, and then it will tell you what kind of soil you have. All right, I just finished all of the soil samples, and I don't know if there's something wrong with the nitrogen test, or all of my soil is completely depleted of nitrogen, which is kind of weird because we have the chickens here. But I noticed that is the main pattern. Every sample was completely depleted of nitrogen, and phosphorus varied, so at least there's some variation there. And 2 out of the 3 samples were, you know, pretty kind of over the limit for potash. And I feel good now that I have a good baseline for, you know, the variety of different soils that are here. I still understand why I postponed doing these tests. I was so impatient, I just want to get it done, and now I need to clean everything up, and I don't look forward to doing this again. I don't know why. This just feels really not fun. Like this, it feels like a not fun part of gardening. and I feel like I'm going to continue to procrastinate with doing it, but I know that now that I can create a plan for adjusting these different levels of the soil, I will need to repeat this test to figure it out. If you have other methods of testing your soil that you found work for you, please let me know, and I'd love to hear about it.